Dust was their language, a dry whisper of a world. Worn thin and out of its haze, rode Jack Rivers, a man carved from regret and rawhide. He'd seen too much blood run red on green fields, too many good men buried beneath nameless dirt. Now a Wells Fargo man's folly had led him into a canyon of death, the air heavy with the scent of pine and coming snow went silent. Then a single gunshot shattered the quiet, a percussive start to a dance of lead and terror. The gold-laden wagons were a graveyard. Jack, his temple bleeding, managed to outlive the massacre. As the storm howled in with a fury as cold as his new reality, he stumbled through a world going white. His horse was dead, his companions colder, and a packet of documents, the very purpose of his perilous journey, was clutched in his hand. They were the evidence he'd been sent to deliver, a ghost ledger of a conspiracy that had already cost him one friend and was threatening to cost him his life. The snow buried the evidence of his escape, a bloody trail swallowed by a white shroud. Cold and blood loss had him on the verge of surrendering to the bitter earth when he saw it, a single, defiant flame flickering through the pines. A promise of warmth, of shelter. It was an impossible distance, a flicker of hope in an abyss of cold, but it pulled him forward one agonizing step at a time. He collapsed on a woman's porch, the last vestiges of his strength, bleeding out onto the wood. The door opened just a crack, revealing the business end of a rifle. And behind it, a face carved from granite, etched with a lifetime of hardship. "You're bleeding all over my porch, Mr. Rivers," she said, her voice weary but firm, a strong timbre that held no fear. The words were a sharp, cold slap of reality. He didn't remember falling. He woke to the scent of venison stew and coffee. Her name was Sarah McKenna, and her hands, though weathered, moved with a quiet, certain grace as she tended his wounds. She spoke little, but her eyes held a depth that told a story of loss he understood all too well. This cabin was her sanctuary, a hard-won peace after a lifetime of hard labor, and he was an unwelcome complication, a bullet-riddled ghost who had stumbled into her quiet world. But when he spoke of the black-coated men with the silver eagle pins, a different kind of tension took root. The fear she'd suppressed returned to her eyes, a shadow he recognized from his own past. She knew them. They were the Black Eagle Society, the enforcers for the new power in the region, a man named Thornton. The same man Jack had been sent to expose, a man who had swallowed her town whole, leaving her son Sheriff Thomas McKenna missing. The same man who had framed Jack for murder. The pieces of the puzzle laid out in the warmth of the fire fit together with a terrible logic. Her son had left her a clue, a last letter hidden in the fireplace. It spoke of gold, of a lost mine, and a secret map, a family claim that a ruthless man wanted. He also told her to trust Jacob Swift Elk, a man who knows the truth about his father's death. It was then that the full truth unspooled. Thornton had found her husband's mine and had killed him for it, faking his death by consumption. The same man who had taken her husband now held her son. Grief, hot and sharp, mingled with a cold, clear purpose in her eyes. "Then we make them pay for it," she said, her resolve a cold steel against the cabin's warmth. The partnership was forged in the silence of their shared mission. But before they could ride for town, the sound of hoofbeats shattered their fragile plan. The Black Eagles had found them. The escape was a heart-pounding race against time. Sarah's cabin became a fortress of betrayal, a battlefield they were forced to abandon. A gunshot, a struggle, and a swift descent into a root cellar. A hidden escape route built by her husband plunged Jack into darkness. He heard her voice, cold and defiant, as she faced down the deputies, a fierce mother protecting her home. "My place is here with you," she'd said. It was a sentiment that would echo in his mind for days. They made it out riding on horses she had readied in anticipation of this very moment. In the face of danger, Sarah was not a delicate woman to be protected, but a force of nature. In the fleeting warmth of their shared hands, a pact was sealed in the cold mountain air. "You might as well call me Jack, and I'm Sarah." They rode to Silver Creek, a town transformed by the railway baron's greed, a labyrinth of danger where every man could be a spy. They slipped through the shadows to find a trusted ally, Doc Sullivan, who revealed the ugly truth: Thornton was running a prison camp of forced labor, and her son might be among them. He told them of a man, an escaped prisoner named Miguel, who knew more, a man hiding in the church basement. The truth they found: there was a blade to her heart. Thomas was alive, but was being tortured for information about the gold mine. He was strong, Miguel said. He had not broken. He had sent her a message, a small battered tin star, and a phrase, "The eagle flies at dawn." But the moment they had the information they needed, the Black Eagles closed in again, forcing them to the governor's private rail car. The train journey was a tense chess match. A new player had joined the game, Jacob Swift Elk, a Ute scout who knew the mountains and their secrets. Swift Elk had brought with him the truth about her husband's death and the mining claim, a document that proved Sarah's legal ownership of the Lost Condor mine. Thomas was being held hostage for a claim that was already his family's. The stakes were higher now. They were heading into the heart of the Beast Thornton's high-altitude work camp on the pretense of a governor's inspection. Swift Elk's knowledge of the mountain's hidden trails and an informant inside the camp, a Black Eagle lieutenant named Cross, gave them a sliver of hope. Dinner with Thornton was a dance of veiled threats and practiced civility. Jack watched, his senses on high alert, as Thornton taunted Sarah with the knowledge of her family's secrets, a cold smile playing on his lips. The general's eyes held a terrifying animal cunning. They all knew this was a trap. The note from Cross confirmed that Thornton planned to detonate the mine tunnel during the inspection, burying Thomas and everyone with him. They had to move tonight, but Thornton had anticipated them, locking them in their quarters. The only way out was through the roof, a perilous crawl across the shingles and into the night. It was a death trap, but with the lives of the innocent hanging in the balance, they had no choice but to take it. The escape was a blur of shadows and gunsmoke. Swift Elk's diversion drew the guards' attention, allowing them a moment to slip away. They found Lieutenant Cross at the guard post. The note hadn't been a trap. Cross had been a spy for Thomas all along. He had taken the same oath as Jack to help the innocent and was willing to die for it. He led them to Thomas's cabin and freed him, a brief, tear-filled reunion. Thomas was alive, but a ghostly shadow of the man he once was, brutalized and weak. His face was a map of what Thornton's men had done to him, but his spirit was unbroken. The escape, however, was far from over. An alarm sounded, and the camp erupted in chaos. Cross stayed behind to fight, to give them a head start, a sacrifice that cost him his life. Jack and Sarah fled, with Thomas the governor and Swift Elk navigating treacherous trails under a hail of gunfire. They found refuge in an old mine shaft, collapsing the entrance to buy time. But the sound of distant explosions shook the mountain, a terrible guttural roar that confirmed their worst fear. Thornton was detonating the mine, and the entire camp burying the evidence and the prisoners with it. They were trapped underground in absolute darkness, with the mountain threatening to come down on top of them. Their escape was a journey into the earth itself, following an underground stream to a roaring river that would carry them out of the mountain. They plunged into the icy water, a freezing torrent that threatened to swallow them whole. They made it to the riverbank, exhausted and freezing, only to find themselves cornered on a ledge, outgunned by Blackwood and his men. But the mountain had one last trick. Sarah's desperate prayer and a hidden Ute curse unleashed a flash flood of violent, purging torrent that swept away their enemies. They were safe for now, stranded on a narrow cliff face. Their only hope was a precarious fallen tree, a natural bridge spanning a 100-foot chasm. Jack, the last warrior, went first, his wounded shoulder a searing fire with every step. He made it, but as Thomas followed, a single rifle shot rang out. Thornton had survived. He was on the canyon rim, a final spiteful specter of vengeance. Sarah stepped out into the open, a defiant target, a mother's ultimate sacrifice. But the shot was never meant for her. Lieutenant Cross, a ghost returned, tackled Thornton from behind. They grappled, falling together until a single final gunshot from Thornton's pistol struck the very tree Sarah was standing on. The bridge gave way. She fell. Jack lunged, their hands clasped. He held on the pain, a distant roar beneath the certainty of her. He would not let go. With Swift Elk's help, they pulled her to safety, leaving the fallen tree and its ghosts behind. With Thornton gone, justice could now be served. They rode to the railway telegraph station, where Governor Morrison sent a message that would seal the fate of Thornton's empire. But the Black Eagles, a relentless pack of wolves, cornered them one last time. In a final desperate battle, they used railway supplies to turn the station into a fortress, a burning barricade against their pursuers. But with their ammunition depleted and the building on fire, their time was running out. Jack, a man who had long ago resigned himself to a lonely, anonymous end, made one last desperate run for the semaphore, a final act of sacrifice to stop the approaching train. He made it, his body screaming in protest, and set the signal just as the Black Eagles charged. A lone gunshot fired by Sarah dropped their leader. She had a rifle, a stolen weapon, and she used it with the fierce grace of a lioness protecting her family. She and Thomas stood guard as the train pulled to a stop, a thunderous arrival that brought with it the law, a company of marshals who would finally see that justice was served. The train carried them away from Shadow Canyon and its ghosts towards a future that was no longer written in blood. A full pardon for Jack, a long road to recovery for Thomas, and for Sarah a future to rebuild. Her hand found as a silent question in the firelit carriage. He had been running for so long he had forgotten what it was to stand still, but looking into her eyes, he knew he had finally found a reason to stop. It was terrifying and exhilarating, a new beginning after a lifetime of ants. The last warrior had found his home.